You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the Beardcast, we're kicking around some ideas, and we thought about to talk about what it means to come out of Lent as we're entering out of Lent into Holy Week. There's a lot to process from that, and so we're gonna have that conversation today. So Zach, as we think about that, what comes to mind for you?
Well, and for me, it's the intention to know what's next. Often in my life, I don't plan ahead very far, which frustrates a lot of people in my life. And so as I was thinking about this season of Lent and nearing the end of it, I mean, we still have got a significant chunk of Lent left with Holy Week and everything from Palm Sunday to Easter. It seems like we packed the bulk of what this season is in 8 days, right? Or 7 days. And so, but it got me thinking of, rather than rushing through all of that, but keeping the Lenten spirit of waiting and being present in what happens after Easter, because we often hit that climax of Easter and the celebration that it is of the resurrection of Jesus and this new life, and then we just move on into ordinary time, or on our time to Pentecost. But it just seems like it all goes back to normal in the season where we very much long for normal. For me personally, I just think it does my soul some good to think about, how do I continue this through Easter and into Pentecost and into the rest of the year. And I know we probably talk about that a lot on this podcast, but it's for me, it's less jarring to get to Easter and go, oh, now I can go back to the things I always did, which seems to be the rub or the hope or the temptation we have in our current day-to-day life. And so I guess for me personally, I just wanted to take a selfish minute on the podcast and process through what the rest of Lent looks like and moving into Easter time.
So I always think of it like ebbs and flows of seasons. And so it ebbs and flows. Our lives do that. Our seasons do that. Like our physical seasons do that. Spring, autumn, fall, those things. Spring, autumn, fall. They use the same, whatever.
Those are the same ones.
Yeah. Well, in Oklahoma, we really have all those in 1 hour. So like, it's kind of confusing. But I think for me, it's once we enter into Lent, it's entering in the Holy Week. And for me, Lent is always about practice. My practices are to connect me closer to God, and really repenting and really looking at my life and asking myself, where can I do better, and working towards doing better. And so, as we move into Holy Week, it becomes, I invest myself into the story of Holy Week. Every year, I read through what happened on that day. There's just something about that. I love investing myself into that. And I got this really, it's today's New International Version. It was Zondervan's attempt at an inclusive Bible that fell flat. Their study Bible has this really great image of the stations of the week of Jesus, the last week on earth. And I always, that's probably the only time I ever really use that, is looking at that, because it's just such a great image of Jerusalem, and like it puts you in perspective of what happened. And I love doing it. Like I immerse myself in that. And then I have Easter, and then I'm real big on those 40 days from there to Pentecost, like what happened, and looking at those mini Easters, those Easters after Easter, that season of Easter that we enter into, and taking it as a celebration of a time, that we celebrate the resurrection. Now what? And really striving to live out the message of Jesus. And that's probably what my sermon's going to be about for Easter this year, is that we've had this event. Now what? We've experienced COVID. We're coming to the end of it. Now what? And I think it's the same thing, like as we enter into these seasons in the lectionary year, or however you celebrate, the real question is now what, but like maybe not now what, but what am I going to do about what I've gained on this journey? And I think that that's when we do that, it can recenter us. Like we think of, this Sunday is Palm Sunday. We can talk about that anticipation of hope that was, and then how Jesus came in a way that we weren't expecting, and ask ourselves in this season, how did Jesus come in a way that we weren't expecting?
Right. And I think maybe, I don't know if I like it. I think I struggle with that question, and now what, right? Because I feel like that's what the disciples, those the folks that follow Jesus, the people that were there at the cross as Jesus dies, had that feeling of, well, now what, right? And this kind of deflated tone and just deflated hope of, now what do we do, right? But I feel like we come out of Easter in much of that way, even with the resurrection, we come out and go, well, now what do we do with this, right? But coming out with that excitement to not leave all that we were present with and learned and brought us closer to God and closer to people through Lent, but carrying that with us. And so not asking that question, well, crap, now what do we do? Right now, do we just wait till Pentecost? What is it that we do? But carrying that momentum and that presence with us, maybe sometimes in the same ways, because like you said, seasons in our life ebb and flow, and sometimes the things that we did during Lent are fruitful beyond, sometimes they're not, and that's okay. But carrying that with us and knowing that we're truly feeling that ebb and flow of life and spirituality and practice. And I think for me, that's always the good reminder of, sometimes we carry these things through Lent, sometimes we don't, but how do we just be present in those moments?
Well, and that's why, I am a casual lectionary person. So like, please understand, I'm not necessarily all up into it. I love it. I love it for a lot of reasons. I like the stability of it and having, the seasons and things like that. And I love it as an opportunity to really share the story, and I really, like, as we come from this season, we're entering into new seasons, and it's season, like, it seems like it's boom, 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 boom. That's where we can, if you want to do another 40-day thing, what are you going to do? I've got a book, 40-day of Parker Palmer meditations that I'm going to use when that comes in after Easter. I'm going to do some other things too. I'm going to be intentional about that. And so I think that that's taking the practice of Lent, that it's something we can continually do. And maybe it's something that sticks. Maybe if you want to read your Bible and that's something you like, it's stuck. If it didn't, that's okay too. But like, that's where we've got to come up with, if it doesn't, then what practices are you practicing to grow your faith? And I think that that's something the church falls flat on, is that we don't, Lent and Easter, we do a great job of, but every other season and every other time in the year, we don't stress that enough. And I think that that's something that we could, definitely would be good and helpful for people.
Well, I think it's that mentality or expectation, or I don't know, that we put on it of, well, you've got to do this, this, and this, right? You've got to pray, you've got to read, you've got to do this, you've got to do it an hour a day, blah, 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 blah. Where rather than encouraging, hey, do what works for you, right? And do it for however long it works for you. And sometimes during a specific season of your life, prayer and meditation may really speak to you, but you may get to a point like after Lent that it doesn't. And that's your soul pushing you into that next space, to claim something else, to grab onto something else that is working, and not feel guilty or bad about letting go of the other thing, but knowing that, hey, there are these seasons, right, where some things speak to us more than others, and that's okay. And I think that's what we don't do a good job with. We perpetuate the stereotypes and bad expectations that we've seen the other faithful do, right? Rather than taking ownership and just being present in what works for us.
Yeah, and I think that the reason why I like practice, I like the idea of practice, is because you look at people, and here's sports balls metaphor. The reason why the professional athletes are at the level that they are is they're continually practicing and they're continually refining their art, refining who they are. And you'll see people, I'll use LeBron James as a good example of this. He's not the player that he was when he first came into the league. He has learned to grow, and now he actually passes the ball, and he cares more about assist and defense than he does about scoring 50 a night. He really wants to, spread the floor. Or as you could look at someone like Blake Griffin, who all he is known for is dunking. And that's, he had his first dunk in like 2 years the other night. There's not much practice you can do on that. But you got to create yourself to be, and in our spatial lives do this. We've got to continue to practice to grow and not be that person we were when we first started the journey, but be a completely different person by the end of the journey. And that's one of the reasons why I love Lent, is this idea of the journey, is that hopefully by the time we started Lent and when we end Lent, we're not the same person as we are when we began it. And I think that that's key. And so as we come into this, the next step is, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is now what? And so what practices are you going to use to grow? And look at some of those things that maybe you didn't do for Lent this year, or if it's something you felt was fruitful for you, like do that. So like if you read the Gospel of Mark this year, that's what we asked our congregation to do. Read the next one, or that's pretty easy to pick up on and moving forward on.
Right. And to bring it back into a Wesleyan Methodist thing, remembering that we're moving on to perfection and love, that, just because we didn't achieve it throughout Lent, that's okay. That's not the point. It's like Matt said, it's this journey that we're moving on to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what speaks to us in these moments, what doesn't, in that continual process and journey to just move forward. Right. And I love the season of Lent for that. I love moving towards Pentecost on that because it's exciting. But it's easy to get bogged down in the, well, what now? And forgetting that it's process, that it's a journey, that it's lifelong. And just remembering what speaks to you in these moments, to run with that as long as you can, and being willing to try something new and different, and or something that's comfortable to tap back into from before. Just keep running through that process and what carries you forward.
So I think that's a good thing. So share with us what you're thinking about, or what your practice is, or what you're looking at doing. You can do that on our, however you listen to us, or do it through our Facebook or Instagram pages. We'd be glad to connect with you on that. And you can check us out at beardedtheologians.com. Pick up some Bearded Theologians gear. It's that season of Mother's and Father's Days, or graduations, or ordinations. It's a good season to pick up some Bearded Theologians gear for your bearded theologian, or if even if they don't have a beard, buy them a Bearded Theologian shirt, because it just would be fun. And so you can find all that at beardedtheologians.com. We want to thank you for listening. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video, and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.